Hello again. This time taking a look at Wargames Atlantic's latest releases, the Classic Fantasy Gods and Villages. Each box makes 24 characters, with 4 sprues of 6 in each. Starting off by looking at the guard sprue, you get a nice selection of heads, weapons, and torsos with both heavy and light armour, as well as a few extra nice bits, such as a chest and a goose. These are sort of fantasy medieval in style, and were designed for use in the game Guards, but they are reasonably generic enough that you could use them in pretty much any fantasy setting. You get 4 regular sized torsos, 1 female, and 1 slightly heavier set. Most of the parts are completely interchangeable, but some parts can only be used with a certain torso, namely a few of the heads. And as mentioned, you get a goose. Moving over to the Villager sprue, it's a bit more interesting, as this kit is trying to make a vast variety of different townsfolk. It is a load of stuff, lots of little extra bits, lots of choice arms and torsos. You get 3 male, you get 3 female, you get loads of different heads. It's almost like a kit basher toolkit. There's a load of little extra bits, there's a fish, there's a snake, there's a teapot, just all sorts. Being a Wargames Atlantic kit, it doesn't come with bases, so I will be using 20mm flat bases from Renedra. I had a few problems with the townsfolk, just because there being so much choice it was a bit overwhelming, and just didn't know what type of characters to make, so I eventually just decided to start sticking stuff together and seeing what happened. The models didn't have much in the way of mold lines, but on a few of them they did need a bit of trimming with the side of a knife. Some of the elements also don't quite fit together well, so you do need to trim them down to get a good fit. I wouldn't say this is the most beginner-friendly kit. First character I assembled was a fancy man. So he gets a nice necklace, one of the nice looking torsos, a fancy cane and a coin he's found. Then I wanted to contrast that by making some kind of beggar. And here's an example of where the kit doesn't quite fit together well, and you need to do a bit of trimming and filing to get a natural looking join. Also, with the neck join being a flat to flat connection, parts can shift before they're fully dry, so you need to check all the way around and make sure it's properly stuck before you move on. Jumping forward, I tried to make a variety of different characters, as well as assembling the guards, who did fit together a bit easier. I also subbed out a head for one from the Wargames Atlantic Spanish Conquistador set, so those 2 kits are compatible in terms of scale and connection type. One downside of the kit is you have integrated bases, which I was planning to blend into the base using some texture paste. But unfortunately they're a bit too big, so I ended up going back, removing them from the bases, and clipping off the puddle base instead, which is a bit of a pain to do, and I much prefer it where they don't have puddle bases built in, even more so when they're this thick. Moving on to the basing, I used 2 different Vallejo ground textures, using sections of each, so you get a nice variety of texture. And also using it to attach a few tiny rocks. To prime the minis, I used black gesso, which was followed up with a dry brush of dark brown to establish some base values. And I'm not going to go into detail on the painting process, just used some AK Interactive and P3 paints to layer up various colours and a few highlights, knocked it back down with a black glaze, then pulled out the highlights again. For some of the larger flat armour panels, I attempted some freehand armour styling so a few of them got a green and tan diamond pattern on one side of the cuirass, or a two-tone helmet. Then for the bases, took a dark brown, followed it up with a tan earth, made sure the rims were painted. Then threw a few tufts on, using 2mm tufts from Games Grass. Assembling a lineup, we have a variety of characters, ranging from fancy people to not so fancy people. Then having a look at the guards, a nice group of kind of medieval looking fellas. These kits are pretty much perfect for any kind of D&D or RPG game. Pretty much any NPC you can think of you could reasonably build using the townsfolk kit. You can also combine the two kits, the guy on the right being the arms and the head of a guard, and the torso of a townsfolk. Having a look at some comparable ranges, with Wargames Atlantic on the left, and an Archon Studio Town Guard on the right. They are pretty much the same scale. If we look at a Fireforge Villager, slightly larger scale, but not too horrendous. And looking at a Frostgrave Cultist 2, it is almost exactly the same scale. And the arms are compatible, I did check. Looking at another Fireforge guy, it is slightly larger scale, but it'll probably look fine at tabletop distance. Then having a look at them all together. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time.